Welcome back to More Sports and Les Levine, the weekend winners edition. The NBA trade deadline just around the corner. Later this week, we are going to bring in cleveland.com's Cavs beat reporter Chris Fedor to talk about the deadline and the Cavs. And Chris, this is not the way most people thought it would be without LeBron James. There was some optimism. I know Kevin Love has been hurt, but when you look at the numbers, this Cavs team is not very good. And really, it's been a challenge to win basketball games, more so than I think most people thought.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. I think coming into the year, the Cavs were hoping to at least be competitive and try and fight for one of those final playoff spots at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. But as you mentioned, it's very, very difficult for them when they've used 19, 20 different starting lineups where they've already traded away Kyle Korver, they've exiled J.R. Smith. Just so many different circumstances surrounding why the Cavs are where they are. But here they are. Here they are, one of the worst teams in the NBA, and now they've got to figure out, okay, what's the best path back to being the team that we thought we could be coming into the year, if that's even possible.
Well, and, you know, the challenge has been under Dan Gilbert's ownership, the Cavs, they're just not very good when LeBron James is not on the team. When you don't have the best player in the world, they've won 29% of their games. With LeBron James, over 67% of their games. So, you know, the part of the problem is we have not had a general manager in charge of the Cavs organization for a second contract. So there hasn't been the continuity that you need to build a team. And when you look at it, you've got a lot of young guys that don't have anybody to lead them right now. Is that, I mean, you see this night in and night out. Is that what it is? Is there's some young talent, but darn if we can figure out how to get them going in the right direction.
Well, I think there are a couple of things, Dave. I think, first of all, when you're relying on so many young guys to be the core of this thing moving forward, and you go into this player development mode, this youth movement, and this rebuild, playing young players comes with a lot of intensity. You see it all over the NBA. The Atlanta Hawks are dealing with it. The Dallas Mavericks are going to deal with it moving forward now that they've lost DeAndre Jordan and Wesley Matthews. The Lakers, without LeBron James, were dealing with inconsistency because young players are still trying to find their way throughout this. And it's very, very difficult. So when you have Colin Sexton playing 30-plus minutes a night and Jetty Osman playing 30-plus minutes a night, you're going to have to deal with the natural growing pains that come along with it. At the same time, I think the thing that they're going to be boosted by, at least, is somebody like Kevin Love returning to kind of stabilize them. When they need a bucket, they have somebody to go to. Because of that, that should help their defense in turn. Now, I don't think the Cavs are going to go on this huge winning streak, Dave, because I think the realities of what this roster is in a post-LeBron era are sitting in front of everybody to see. But they were expecting Kevin Love to be the rock, the stabilizer, the leader, and not having him, it has certainly to some degree contributed to the fact that they've got one of the worst records in the NBA.
And to kind of dovetail what you were talking about with the young guys playing so much, plus minus, and these are the worst in basketball. Osman is the worst, Sexton second, and then you got Thompson and Hood that are 5 and 6. So 4 of the top 6 worst plus minuses. Question now becomes, do you expect them to make a deal at the trade deadline? Trade deadline creeping in. Do you expect them to do, and are they looking for young players? Are they looking for draft picks? Are they looking for both?
Yeah, I think they're looking for both. And I think the most likely avenue, Dave, is for them to take on some bad contracts that go beyond this year, maybe extend into next year. And their reward for taking on those bad contracts is getting a first-round pick attached or a young up-and-coming prospect attached to that. I think that's the only hope that they have here because, you know, when you go through 4 straight trips to the NBA Finals, you kind of empty that treasure chest when you talk about assets. You trade 2 first-round picks for Timofey Mozgov, right? You trade another first-round pick for Kyle Korver. So what the Cavs were left with was a pretty empty chest. And I think coming into this season, Dave, one of their goals, they had so many different goals, and some of them were realistic, some weren't. one of their goals was to acquire as many assets as possible, not for this year, but for the future. And they've done that already with the trade of George Hill. They've done that with the Kyle Korver trade. So I don't think there's going to be a blockbuster deal. I don't think Kevin Love is going to be traded at the deadline. I think if he is traded, it's more likely to happen in the offseason. There are a number of teams that have loaded up for the free agency class of 2019. And there are only so many free agents that are going to change destinations. So the teams that miss out on those big name free agents in the offseason, you know what they're going to do? They're going to pick up the phone and they're going to call a team that they think has an all-star that could be traded. And the Cavs would probably get a phone call or two about Kevin Love in the offseason. But I think if they do make a move at the deadline, it's probably involving Rodney Hood, Alec Burks, maybe possibly, although I think it's a little bit more unrealistic, Tristan Thompson, those kinds of names. I think Kevin's safe.
Last question I'll ask you. We had a lot of talk about Kyrie Irving apologizing to LeBron James for the misunderstanding or being a hard-headed young player. And now there's some talk that there could very well be a reunion of Irving and James out in Los Angeles. Are you buying that? And what's your reaction to it if indeed that does happen?
So I asked a number of different Cavaliers this very question, Dave. The guys that played with Kyrie, that played with LeBron, that knew the dynamic between them really well. And I think the most common answer I got from all of the guys that I talked to was, it's Kyrie Irving. You know, it's so hard to know what's in the mind of Kyrie because he's such a different person. He's wired different. I had one player call him a skater boy that just happens to be really great at basketball. That's how he's wired. That's how he thinks. He wants to challenge people. He wants to make people think. He wants to keep people guessing. And he's very, very moody. So what he thinks today may not be what he thinks in 3 weeks. What he thinks in 3 weeks may not be what he thinks in 3 months. I have a hard time seeing it, Dave, because I feel like I have an understanding of why he wanted out of Cleveland. He wanted away from LeBron. LeBron was a bit of a quote-unquote glory hound. He had so much control. When Kyrie signed his extension with the Cavs in 2014, Dave, he was pitched that he was going to be their Steve Nash. David Griffin, the general manager at the time, was in Phoenix before he came to Cleveland. He built the entire thing around Steve Nash in Phoenix. He sold that same thing to Kyrie, and he told Kyrie, hey, you can go out and recruit free agents. The Cavs thought they had Trevor Ariza because Kyrie recruited him. The Cavs had at least an offer sheet in place for Gordon Hayward because Kyrie recruited him. So he had that kind of control for, a couple of days. And then LeBron James comes back and everything changes. So why he wanted to go to Boston was for that kind of control, that kind of power, to have an opportunity to test his own greatness and see, hey, can I lead a team to a championship in a way that I can't in Cleveland? And it just seems like not enough time has passed and Kyrie hasn't changed enough for him to say, you know what? Yeah, I'll be second fiddle to LeBron or third fiddle to LeBron and Anthony Davis in Los Angeles. I just find it hard to believe, knowing how he's wired, knowing that he's an alpha, knowing that he wants to be the man, and all of the things that come with that. And he wants an opportunity to lead his own team to a championship. It just would not happen in Los Angeles with LeBron. And I just don't think he's changed his mind on that.
Chris Fedor, we appreciate the insight, and as you did say, you never know. What Kyrie's thinking today might not be what he's thinking tomorrow or during the off season.